Welcome to Kidney Health Interview. I'm your host, Natalia Karpenko. Each week, I interview a guest who is a kidney patient, their family member, organ donor, or healthcare professional. Our goal to empower every kidney patient with the support and education. Join our podcast. Good morning, everyone. Today in our studio, we have Dorothea Murrell. Dorothea Murrell, she is a lupus advocate. She also manages lupus and kidney patient support group on Facebook that's called the Life Plug. And Dorothy has incredible story to share of her own journey fighting and living with lupus. Dorothea, so excited to have you in our studio and welcome to Kidney Health Interview.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Wonderful, so great to have you. Dorothea, where are you based? And I can see the beautiful sunshine behind your window. So tell us a little bit more.
Yes, I'm actually in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a beautiful city and it's a beautiful day today too.
Amazing. So thank you for finding time on this Saturday morning. It's a bit on afternoon on your side.
Right.
So in California, it's 11, it's 2 in Northern Carolina. Dorothea, it was really wonderful to have opportunity to connect with you just by social media message. And here we are. We'll be able to spend some quality time learning about your personal journey, being diagnosed with lupus, and then fighting kidney disease, as well as some other issues you have to face in your physical life, as well as the strengths you were able to gain from your own journey. So I'm incredibly thrilled to be with such a beautiful and strong woman as you are.
Oh, thank you.
Having this conversation. Dorothea, could you share a little bit more about yourself? So what do you do? What's your involvement besides few things I was able to mention at the beginning of the introduction?
Yes, like you said, I do have a support group online with Facebook called The Life Plug. And basically it's an online support group for those that have been at some point diagnosed with lupus or kidney disease. I connected the two because oftentimes lupus can affect other parts of your body, other major organs. So that's why I combined the two. What I basically do, I go out and I talk also to support groups, panels, anywhere that I can spread the word about this awful disease, lupus. So yes, so I'm excited about being that voice for the voiceless. Yes.
Incredible. Dorothea, I can see also in your outfit you have this beautiful butterfly.
Yes.
Can you tell me about this?
Absolutely. The butterfly, the lupus organization has used the butterfly to represent the butterfly rash that most people get when they have lupus. It's usually in the shape of a butterfly spanning across your face and winging out on both sides. And I had exactly that. And so I try to have a little butterfly everywhere I go to represent that disease, lupus. Yes.
Yeah, that's an incredible mission. How does it work usually in a lupus awareness when you come to crowds and general public that might not be aware of autoimmune diseases and lupus in general? How do you start conversation?
Yes, I usually start the conversation with my personal journey with this disease, lupus. And it's amazing that the places that I've gone, there's so many people that have not heard about lupus. You know, we hear about cancer, we hear about other diseases that have a well-represented front, but lupus is almost like a silent disease. And so I start with my personal journey and we start from there. And in sharing that, oftentimes people in the audience will say, oh my God, I think I do know one or two. I never knew what it was. Or someone may say, I may be experiencing some of those symptoms. Maybe I need to go to the doctor. So I usually start with my personal journey. Yes.
What do you think does contribute for such a poor education, or let's say poor literacy around lupus still?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is because it is still, they're still doing a lot of research when it comes to lupus. But in some communities, like the African American communities, who is one group that is a high risk for it, oftentimes the funds may not even be there to spread education about it. And so that is one of my missions, to make sure that I go into these communities, not just the African American communities, but other communities, Asian, Native American, all of these Caucasian, all of these groups that may be affected by this. And use my voice, start with that, and hopefully somebody can come along and help, fuel that mission. Yes.
That's wonderful. That's so neat. One of our previous podcast guests, a younger patient, also was experiencing some of the symptoms and not necessarily was able to get diagnosed timely. And then she had experienced numerous complications
Mm-hmm.
that made her life certainly way more complicated
Oh,
than.
yes.
So the part of lupus diagnosis, when you share general information to public, are there any sources, organizations that people go to actually find out, maybe to do the self-check or to do the check on their family members, just to check if they may be in a high risk or there might be some symptoms that would point out that you might have lupus, things like that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, there are some definite ones. Oftentimes, lupus can mask itself um, to, it's almost like it's hard to diagnose sometimes. But oftentimes, there are a few things that, you can check. Often, you can definitely go to your local doctor. But if you're experiencing like loss of weight, all of a sudden you're breaking out with rashes that just came out of nowhere, extreme pain, in your body, loss of hair, joints hurting. These are some markers that could indicate that you may have lupus. Yes, and so if you are experiencing that, definitely go to your family doctor.
Excellent. Yeah, such a good
Yeah.
advice.
Yes.
So Dorothea,
That's okay.
want to make sure I pronounce your name correct. It's a beautiful name.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dorothea, as you said, in many of these awareness events, it's very powerful to start awareness by sharing your own story and the way how you were diagnosed, how you experienced disease, and what was your journey. Would you like to share your own story with our audience today?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. Go ahead.
So I really appreciate this because I think awareness about lupus and autoimmune diseases are very important, especially when we're talking also about younger generation.
That's true.
And we can see that there is a rapid increase in patients with CKD actually who have autoimmune diseases that cause them kidney failure. And it's a bit harder managing CKD when someone has an autoimmune disease that's not diagnosed.
That's true.
Things can turn around really fast. So what was your diagnosis? How did you find out? And have you had symptoms that were ignored for some time, or were you always very proactive with your health?
Well, I did ignore some of the symptoms before it reached its head or before it started to explode. I had experienced tremendous weight loss, and this was months ahead of time. I was already a small person, but all of a sudden I started losing weight. And I thought that I was losing weight. I thought that I was losing weight because I was so busy, but that was definitely one of the things that was going on that was a part of lupus. So months before I got really sick. I got really sick, and the symptoms to me seemed very familiar. Seemed like I had the flu. And so I just treated it as though I had the flu. Okay, this is going to go away in a few days or maybe 3 days. So after having those symptoms of just feeling very achy in my body, um, fevers, but they were low grade fevers at the time. And then from Monday till about Wednesday, I was feeling really bad. So I went to the emergency room and they told me, well, you have the flu. Just go home and drink plenty of fluids, some soup, and you'll be okay. Well, between Wednesday and Friday, it just took an extreme turn to the point that when I would try to lay down, my body was just, I mean, I was in so much pain from, I had achiness. Um, I remember sweat glands apparently was just going crazy because at night I was just sweating so bad to the point where I had to change my sheets. And then by that Friday, I was swollen beyond recognition. So I knew then that probably something else was going on. And it was then that I went to my internal medicine doctor, and he was spot on, pretty spot on. He said, I'm not sure, but I think you may have some type of autoimmune disease. At that time, he didn't say anything about lupus. And so at that time, my head is spinning. And going back, I remember walking into the doctor's office. I was so swollen that the people that were in the waiting room, I could hear their gasp. And you know how something is just swollen so big that it loses its form? I was beyond recognition. So they carried me in the back, and that's when he said, you know, I think there's something going on with your immune system. And that's where it all started. That's where it all started. Yes. He sent
Wow.
me to a specialist, and the specialist, after taking some tests, did confirm that I had lupus, SLE. So there we go.
Wow, that sounds, it's been a really horrifying experience that. Uh,
Yes.
how many weeks did it take from your first symptoms, this kind of flu, but not really flu, to actually getting diagnosed with autoimmune disease?
Actually, within 2 weeks. Yeah. But previously, before that, months before, I had experienced tremendous weight loss, but I didn't have any pain. It was just the weight loss. But from the time that the flu-like symptoms came, it was about 2 weeks. Really say you have lupus, and I never forget what that felt like. You know, being told that you have an autoimmune disease where there is no cure.
So at that time, you mentioned that it was very shocking, it was scary. How did you learn about autoimmune disease? Have you had any prior knowledge, or everything started from that point of diagnosis, your journey of learning about autoimmune and managing it?
Yes. To be honest with you, prior to that, I didn't know much about autoimmune diseases. I heard different stories from different people, but as you know, when people are diagnosed with something, illness, most of the time, they're pretty secretive about it. So before then, just hearing little things like on Good Morning America, things like that about autoimmune disease. In passing, that was probably the most I knew about it at that time prior.
Yeah, so was that, were you scared? Were you frustrated? Were you just like ready to learn? What were phases of that time?
Right. Well, after being diagnosed with lupus, of course, when you're in the doctor's office and they are telling you that you have lupus, they just start throwing all of this information your way, and it's so overwhelming. And of course, at that moment, everything was a big blur. But over a course of time, of course, I wanted to, one, read about and find out what I was up against. And so to me, The more knowledge you get, the more powerful and the more you can be empowered within that situation. And so I started just buying books. I started, because, at that time it was 1996. So we didn't have true access to what we have access, now. And so I bought plenty of books. I started asking around, if any of my friends knew of anybody that had lupus that I could talk to. And to my amazement, there wasn't a lot of support groups at that time. And I didn't know anybody personally. No one in my family had ever had lupus. So I didn't really have a whole lot of resources, but those books that I could buy was just a tremendous help. And so that helped me gain some knowledge about that illness.
So you said that it's been 22 years ago, so in 1996 when you were diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
And that is certainly a long time ago in consideration of social media development. And do you see a big changes right now in lupus awareness, in lupus support groups with social media being part of it?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the greatest things now, being that we have social media. You can just, at the touch of your fingertips, you can go on and find out as much as you can about lupus. Also, you can find many support groups. I mean, there are tons out there, and you can find others that may be experiencing what you're experiencing. I wish I would have had that during my time, but I'm so glad that we have that now, where you could just log on, you can talk to people and share, your experiences and be empowered through that. Absolutely.
Was the reason why you started your own support group on Facebook, was this is one of the reasons why you want to bring communities of kidney and lupus patients together?
Yes, I did. A lot of times, most of our lupus support groups, it's just for lupus, and that's fine. But what I found out was that oftentimes lupus, I like to describe it like a hurricane. I used to live in a place, Wilmington, North Carolina, and they were very accustomed to hurricanes. And as you know, hurricanes, most people don't die from the hurricane itself, but they die from flying debris or floodwaters. And that's exactly how lupus works. When I had lupus, I did not have kidney disease, but the lupus, as you know, goes after your vital organs. And in my case, it went after my kidneys. And so that's why I wanted to connect the two, because most people I meet, their kidneys are greatly affected through lupus. And so that's why I connected the two. I wanted to be able to talk to both groups.
Yeah, I really like that you have this approach of also preventative, and uh, it's so important, as you said, because lupus is a root cause of many other complications that when patients might be diagnosed with autoimmune, it's already too overwhelming to think about anything else.
That's true.
As you compare that with the storm and hurricanes, that that's just a tip of the iceberg in some ways,
Yes.
where your life gonna lead you unless you know what are you dealing with. So,
That's true.
um, Dorothea, how about your own journey? Have you had also your own complications that you have to face in a way of fighting lupus?
Absolutely. When I had lupus, my lupus it did eventually go into remission. But for 10 years, I suffered with lupus. And it would range from mild to extreme, what they call flare ups. And so most people that have lupus are familiar with that term, flare ups. And usually the flare ups, you could be doing fine one moment, and then all of a sudden, you would have a flare up where um, it would be tremendous inflammation. And so, with that being said, mine could manifest itself in forms of extreme ulcers in my mouth, extreme rashes. I still have some of the marks here. I call them beauty marks now, but because it reminds me of where I was. And so oftentimes during that time when I would have a flare up, it would just, I mean, it would come at the same place for me with the rashes. I would have tremendous blisters all across here, around my nose, in my nose. And it was very, very painful. The pain itself was extreme. It wasn't something that you could just kind of push yourself through that pain. But oftentimes I would have to lay in bed for days, just joints hurting. And so being able to having my doctor give me steroids, different types of meds, um, it was I'm balancing that, trying to figure out how we can manage those flare-ups. And so it was pretty difficult, very difficult,
Yeah,
very
you're
difficult.
a very strong woman. Just listening how you describe those severe symptoms and severe um, flares that you experience, it's just horrifying. Um,
Yes,
so much pain, so much inconvenience, so much
that's
probably
true.
um, challenge and some kind of anger with all that, dealing that, not being in control of. I'm just curious, how about the medication? Have you experienced over time with medicine progressing toward lupus research? Are there more medications that allows you to be more in control of your lupus, or it's still pretty random?
It was still, I think it did eventually reach a place where it was pretty manageable. And what I mean by manageable with lupus and those flare-ups just randomly happening, it was very difficult to keep a job. I was working, be doing fine one minute and extremely sick the next minute. So being able to have something prescribed to me that can keep those flare-ups at a minimum was the goal. And so it was a balancing act, and it was very challenging, I'm sure, for my doctor at that time. And so, but it did eventually get to a place where I can actually get through a whole day without having a flare up. And eventually, for me, um, those days became more where I was able to get through one day, and then now I was able to get through 2 days. And so, but with lupus, there's no two alike. So in my case, and that's why I like to say, just in my case, um, and with the medicines that were prescribed, I was able to get to a place where I could actually get through a day without a flare up.
That's great. Yeah. And it's a big accomplishment with someone who's know how hard to
Yes.
fight every minute with this disease.
Yes.
Dorothea, so going back to your journey with a diagnosis, taking time to find the right management, medication, knowledge. You mentioned that you went through a number of complications and one of them kidney disease.
Yes.
So how did this begin? Were you aware about lupus and its impact on kidney, or again, some of the diagnoses were just surprising, and then you have to deal with the circumstances? Yeah.
Right. In my case, I had lupus for 10 years. And I remember going to my doctor's office, and he said, I have good news and I have bad news. I said, okay, give me the good news first. And he said, well, your lupus seems to be in remission. He said, but unfortunately, due to the scarring of your kidneys for over 10 years due to lupus, um, he said, I'll probably give you 1 year, your kidneys are going to fail. And of course, that was horrifying. And, lupus in itself was horrifying. And I had heard the doctor tell me that, in the beginning, lupus tries to go after your vital organs, your brain or your kidneys, your lungs, your heart. And I just kind of didn't think about it because it wasn't happening to me. But hearing the news that now, one, lupus is gone, but now you have kidney failure was very devastating. I felt like I had lost control before with lupus, but now this was a whole different situation because Unlike lupus, they can give you medicine, we can hope it works, but now I could possibly be in need of an organ. So that was horrifying.
Yeah, that's really scary because kidney disease is unreversible.
Hmm.
And unfortunately for autoimmune patients, very often the decline of kidney function goes so fast that
Yes,
there is not enough
absolutely.
time to realize and get a plan in the place.
Hmm.
But I know you are the fighter, and I know that you always find your way,
Yes,
to
yes,
find your own path, and then, uh, making sure that you get in the right place to be the advocate for other patients. So
absolutely.
how did it take, what did you do after your diagnosis with ESRD, and what were your actions um, to save your life and gain back your quality of life?
With the kidney failure, you mean?
Yep.
Okay. Well, after being diagnosed, well, after he said it would happen in 1 year, he was absolutely correct. And that was the fortunate thing about my situation too, is that I had excellent doctors and they were always spot on. We don't always have that situation. But in my case, he was absolutely right. 1 year from that point, my kidneys did eventually fail. I was being watched. Before then, I would go in for regular routine visits, and you could actually see the whole decline of my kidney functions over a course of a year. And so when it happened, he said, okay, now you're going to have to get dialysis treatment to stay alive. And so there again, I was forced to learn about something new that I had never heard, never had experienced. So I was so afraid to even learn about it that I did not know what dialysis was. All I knew it was a life-saving function. So my first day of dialysis, I'll tell you this funny story. Um, I show up to dialysis in a full pantsuit, full makeup, earrings, everything. Nobody, I guess I didn't get the memo that that is not the dress code for dialysis. So,
Well done. Look at you. You were so prepared.
oh yeah, I walk in and I'm sitting there and a social worker comes out and she says, "You must be my 9 o'clock appointment." I said, "Absolutely." My husband and I walk in the back and I'm sitting down and she looks at me and she says, "Wait a minute." She said, "I'm thinking you're here for a job interview, but you're actually here for dialysis." And, of course, tears just began to roll down my eyes. And she said, "I am so sorry. You would just, what you had on just kind of threw me." I was like, "I am so sorry." But it was from that point on that I had to receive dialysis treatment for 3 days a week, anywhere from 3 to 4 hours at a time, and sometimes 5 hours. And so that there again, that was horrifying. It was something very difficult because with dialysis, I didn't have a choice to say, I don't think I'll show up today. I was truly dependent upon that dialysis machine, and I'm grateful because um, I was able to get those treatments, which were brutal at times. When you go in, they connect you to a dialysis machine and it filters out your blood. And it was very brutal. Oftentimes, when I would finish, um, I was very tired, very fatigued, very sick. And so there was nothing else to do. For 3 years, that was my life, literally.
3 years on hemodialysis.
Yes,
And did you take some time to adjust to dialysis? Because certainly being ESRD patient requires to have a very strict diet, managing fluids, dealing with a lot of tiredness and exhaustion, and finding the inner
yes,
strength to keep
yes,
going. So what was your realizations and reflections of dialysis and getting better over time?
yes. I'm going to be totally honest, in the beginning, it was really bad for me, because one, like you said, you had to adjust to being on dialysis, and with that, diet, what you ate, how much fluid you would intake, had a tremendous. I mean, it played a tremendous part. And so we had a nutritionist on staff there, and it was probably a year before I even had an appointment with her. She would come by, she would say, Miss Merle, you need to come talk to me. This is going to help your progress. And I was like, well, I got it. And so I never forget, I had too much, it was during the summer, and I had too much water.
Mm-hmm.
And I got extremely sick because I had passed the fluid amount. And so it was then that I learned very quickly you cannot drink with so much water, and you have to really watch what you eat. Foods that have a lot of water in it, fruits that have water, because it would really either make you sick, or if you abide or and play by the rules, it made dialysis so much better. And so I had a meeting with her, and she gave me this complete outline of what you should eat, how much you should drink. And I never forget, I had my faithful companion jug where it would measure the amount of fluids I could intake per day. And it just made life a whole lot better. I think from that point on, I said, hey, I want to play by the rules. And so that's what I did. And it really helped. It really helped. Mentally was another piece too. Um, Wrapping your mind around the fact that now your quality of life is not the same, and learning how to adjust with that. And so that was a whole nother piece that often people don't talk about, having a support system. Yeah.
So, what was your support system at that time?
Absolutely. My number one support system was my family, mainly my husband. Oftentimes I know others may not be as fortunate as I was, but I really have to give credit to my husband. I've been married 27 years now. And at that time, I had two little ones. And, the roles change. He now was not just a husband, but now he was a caregiver. And so I'm sure he had to adjust to some things too, being in that new role. And so he was my greatest support system. And often he's a funny person. So when I would have those moments of feeling deep despair, feeling like giving up, he would step in, and the power of laughter, the power of, hey, you can do this. You're going to get through this. You're going to get through this. And he was there for me. Yes.
That's really wonderful to hear someone who has such a good relations in a family, and it's hard on spouses to step into this new role. But I can see how much your face shines when you speak about your husband. So
Yes.
I'm sure there is a lot of love and affection in your marriage.
Oh,
So
yeah.
your husband was a great support system, and he was there for you. Uh, have you had also any friends or some other acquaintances that you've met through the kidney community, lupus community, that became your support system over time?
Right. Well, in our city, Charlotte, I actually could not really find at that time support groups that I could connect with, other than the information that they would give me at the dialysis center. And that's another thing that I plan and hope to do at each dialysis center, making it more patient friendly for those that are walking through that, making it more accessible to ask questions. We do have social workers there, but having other people that have actually walked through that process, I think plays even a more tremendous part. But I had my sister who was aware of it. I did not tell a whole lot of people. They did encourage me, hey, tell as many people about the fact that you need an organ, you need a kidney. Just ask your friends, your family, ask everyone. But I found out at that time I didn't know, but I was so scared to ask anybody, would you be willing to give that spare that you have? You have two kidneys. And but the idea of asking someone for such a delicate thing, it was terrifying. Mm-hmm. And so what I found out afterwards was that that is the running thing for people that are in need of an organ. They just won't ask because, one, they may not know how to ask. So that's another thing that I do, teaching people how to ask. And we'll talk about that later. But yes, so I had a small support group, but it could have been larger if I would have spread the word. Yes.
Yeah, you touch a couple of points besides, engaging people in disease awareness. Sometimes it's really hard to share with someone weakness or illness and bring, sometimes it feels for patients more negativity in life of others. But when we start sharing with other people, we may find so much support and compassion that we never knew that those people may have, even family history of similar diseases or conditions.
That's so true.
So that takes certainly a lot of strength to come, in a crowd of people that we don't know, or people that we know a little bit, and just make that statement that I have that condition and that is what makes my life challenging, but it doesn't define other aspects of my personality. And sometimes it's a really hard phase. How was it for you? When did you gain your own voice in defining yourself, as a kidney advocate, as a lupus advocate, and being more confident, stepping in those shoes in the front of strangers?
Yes. Well, eventually, I don't know if I'm going too fast, but eventually, after going through dialysis for 3 years, it was starting to take its toll. As you know, often people that are on the waiting list sometimes die waiting. And so with that treatment, it was life-saving, but it was also a brutal process. And so what I found out after going through it for 3 years, my sister said, hey, I don't want to just stand by and allow you to go through this. What can I do to help? Or how can I become a donor? And that's how my voice started after that whole process of her donating her kidney. I don't know if I'm going ahead of you.
No, it's really great. So the biggest part of your defining yourself as a voice of kidney community was something that someone offered help without even you asking for help. And that power of saying just simple yes to someone offering help and accepting it made you more empowered.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I want to check also, I really would love to learn more about your kidney transplant journey, because as you said, 3 years on dialysis, and it's put toll on you. It's really hard at the beginning. Then it gives you time to learn how to manage it. But over time, emotional and physical drain is really overwhelming. So what were your options at that time? Were you on the transplant list, or were you already looking for some family or friends organ donors? And how did this process go for you?
Yes, I was on the transplant list. And they were starting the process of, first of all, my sister came forth at, I guess it was around the third year. And she said, listen, I need to do something. So she went down and she learned about becoming a donor, a living donor, and that she could live with one kidney. And so she started that process. She went and got tested to see if she was a match. My brother also came forth. And it was so amazing because unlike most families, I met most of my families in my family in my 20s. So I wasn't raised with them. And so that was so powerful in itself. I had met my sister in my 20s, and she's younger. I'm the oldest. And for her to come forward to make such a sacrifice like that was so overwhelming. And when she said that, I was like, wow, you would probably be the last person I would have asked. And she went, she did it, she got tested, and she was a perfect match. And I'm telling you, I think for the first time in 3 years of having dialysis, I could honestly see a ray of hope. And so when my doctors, knew that she wanted to do that, they started my evaluation period. I went through it. And so it was everything went smoothly until the day of that transplant. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about your sister. And
Yes.
since she became an organ donor, have you spoke with her after the organ donation, and you learn what made her decide to become a kidney organ donor?
Yes. My sister is an awesome human being and my awesome sister. And at that time, amazingly enough, she was getting her PhD, and she had little ones herself. And she wanted to do this for me. And so, she went and she learned everything. I mean, she was even telling me things that I would not even ask someone to be a donor. And I think by just getting all of that knowledge about becoming a donor empowered her to come forward and to do that. It took away all of the fears because she was well informed. And so after that, she was like, oh, yes, we can do this. We can do this. I understand the process. I understand that I can live with one kidney and have a full life. And that's what she did. And I'm telling you, it was better than Christmas Day or any birthday.
I can only imagine that. So who brought the news to you?
When the news about her being a perfect match.
Yep.
Okay, one of the transplant nurses called. And so I'm sure one called her and one called me. And I never forget, you're full of anxiety because when someone comes forth, all kind of things run through your mind. Oh my God, someone actually wants to do this for me, for one. I'm having another chance at life. Then you're concerned about her well-being too, because I was concerned about, okay, she's doing this for me. I'm hoping everything goes well for her. She's coming in well informed. And so after we got tested and all, I get that phone call, and the nurse said, Miss Merle, everything is set to go. I think we're on. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is great. And so things begin to move very quickly from that point.
So just one question about this transplant preparation process. So
Yes.
besides her being a perfect match, both of you were already qualified health-wise. Your sister was very healthy and you were very healthy, like matching your vitals, matching your weight, matching your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
That's really great. I'm asking because very often a lot of kidney patients being on dialysis, they're experiencing certain complications that then they need to work on certain goals to get qualified. And that could be quite challenging journey, whether it's weight management or labs, controlling their potassium, phosphates. So were you intentionally knowing that you have to be book perfect to get qualified for transplant, or just through your entire journey on dialysis, you had all your labs always in line?
Yes, my setbacks pretty much weighed, everything was set to go. I was fortunate that I did not have any of the major medical concerns. As you know, there are tons of people that, um, due to the reason why they're there for kidney, for dialysis, they're there for many reasons. Um, but in my case, I didn't have any of the major, um, illnesses going on or situations, but I did have a few setbacks. After they told me that I could get this transplant, everything was set to go. She was healthy. I remember my brother, he came forth, and one, he wasn't a perfect match. Um, but one of my setbacks was that after we were set to go, I had a staph infection. It was something going around, at my dialysis center, and each patient was getting it, and I got it. And it actually set us back 6 months. Actually, when they told me I had the staph infection, my doctor was like, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to even do this transplant. Let's just wait and see. We're going to give you, antibiotics, for about 6 months. I mean, powerful doses. And so he did that. And so at the end of that 6 months, they tested me again to make sure everything was lined up. And it was, thank goodness. And he said, listen, everything is fine. It's lined up. We're going to make this happen real quick. And it really did. It went really fast.
Finally,
But that,
yes. But as you said, it stepped things back. And how did it make you feel? Like knowing that it's already there and both of you qualified, perfect match, and then having that infection. Was it again just threatening and terrifying, or you already knew that your goal is getting this transplant, whatever it takes?
no, I was devastated when I heard he called my sister in and myself. And he, at the time when I had the staph infection, he said, your numbers just lined up, even do this. And I actually thought that there could be a great chance that, it's just not going to happen. And I was devastated. I was devastated. I had thanked her for coming forth. And she's like, no, we're going to wait and see. And my husband was like, let's just go through the process and don't give up. But, oftentimes, when trying to get a kidney transplant, it is a balancing act. It's very sensitive. Anything could, you know, cause you to have a setback. And in my case, being on dialysis, being very exposed in that environment at the dialysis center, certainly, anything could happen. And so I wasn't prepared for that. And I was devastated, but I did what the doctor said. I began to take the antibiotics, and through prayer, just praying that, this thing would really work and this transplant could actually happen. But yes, it was a big disappointment, a big disappointment.
So I'm so glad to hear that. Even after 6 months and the setbacks, that was incredibly hard emotionally,
Yes,
that things worked out and the transplant surgery went successfully. And how many years kidney strong are you now?
I'm actually over 13 years.
Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful. That's
yeah,
amazing.
over 13 years. And this coming April, 2020, it will be 14 years. Yes.
Do you do like a celebration? Do you get together with your sister? How do you keep the date in your memory?
Yeah. Well, yes, I do celebrate. And one of my celebrations, I wish I could give her the whole world. But one of my celebrations, because I wanted to kind of throw her off a little bit. So instead of doing it on our kidney anniversary, what I did, my birthday, which comes in March, to celebrate my birthday, I was actually going to celebrate her because of what she had done. And so, what I did, I went to her hometown. I gathered all her friends and some of our family, and I met at a restaurant. And so she didn't know I was at the restaurant. She was in another part. I had somebody to keep her away from the area I was. And so she walks in this room with her friends, all of her friends. And I was sitting there on my birthday. And she came in and she said, I'm confused. One, it's your birthday. Two, you're here in my city. And why are you here? What's going on? And I was like, I'm here to celebrate you for doing this for me, for giving your kidney, one of your kidneys to me. And so that was one of the things that I do, but I could never give her enough, but that was one small thing just to say thank you, for what she did.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And so you're doing a lot of wonderful work also in kidney disease advocacy and also in organ donor community. And
Yes.
on the previous conversation, you mentioned that uh, you had some initiatives how you empower kidney patients to actually learn about asking for organ donation or sharing awareness among their family members. So I'm really excited to hear about your party skills, event organizing skills, and how do you actually bring that all together?
Yes, I'm not the master of organizing things, but one of the things that I am truly excited about is, like I said, one of the running themes was people they just won't ask. And I'm ashamed to say, in my situation, I was willing to sit there and not ask anyone. I knew plenty of people, but I was willing almost to pretty much lose the battle before I was willing to ask someone, hey, do you mind going down and being tested to see if you're a match? I need a kidney. And so one of the things that I found out is that I wasn't just by myself. Most people are that way because it's so sensitive. And so I said, hey, I'm going to do what is called a donor party. I'm going to, for the person that is in need of a kidney, invite their family, we invite their friends, and we get lit for calls. And so what we do, we have plenty of education about becoming an organ donor, and we will have people stand up, such as myself, and share my journey of needing a kidney. And I will talk about the person in need of the kidney. They don't have to say a word, but they will have someone that will be a voice for them and make their families, make their friends aware of what their loved one and friend is going through. And so everybody seems to be pretty excited about it, and especially those who are in need of a kidney, because this way they can kind of take themselves out of it and have someone kind of talk for them. So that's one of the things that I do. I also go into communities, low income areas, any area, and just at different functions, health fairs. And we talk about how to become a donor. When you go get your license, how to sign up, how to get in North Carolina. I think you get a heart. I'm not sure if it's all over. I believe it is, but you can sign up and it's so easy to become a organ donor. So I go into communities. I do speaking engagements, summits, you name it. Anywhere I can spread the word about the importance of becoming a donor. Through my story, I'm there. I'm there.
Yeah, you have incredibly powerful message and the
Thank
most
you.
amazing journey. So I'm sure that it makes a big difference to have you to be for someone who's looking for kidney um, organ donor and being their voice and being supportive. Because as you said, for many patients who are being crushed into dialysis and asking for organ donation, it's not things that we used to be doing. It's nothing that we've been taught in our life,
Mm-hmm.
in the school system or in our family. So that is a new skill, the new knowledge that someone needs to earn. Um,
That's true.
so it's so great that you are doing this for people and empowering them and bringing their family together. So it's not only enables them to know more about kidney disease, but ultimately brings a better support system.
That's true. Absolutely. That is the goal. That is the goal.
Um,
Yes.
so, I really love all these involvements you do. And I'm sure many people in our audience may want to reach out to you directly. And
Yes.
find out how they can be part of your community, maybe get access to your calendar and see you in any upcoming events. So what will be the best source for people in our audience to follow up with you?
Absolutely. One is I have a Facebook group called The Life Plug, and that is with one G, The Life Plug. You can simply go on Facebook, look for The Life Plug, Dorothea Merle, and ask to join. That is one way to keep up with what I'm doing. That's one way. Another, for those who may be experiencing either lupus or kidney disease, kidney failure, you can join the group and be a part of that community. Another way is my email, which is dmurrill205@gmail.com, and that's DMURRILL205@gmail.com. And that you can get up with me through that. I am here.
Incredible. Dorothea, just a last thing. I would really love you to share your reflection in a time when you were diagnosed with lupus, with kidney disease, and overcoming those really difficult and hard and life-threatening diseases and earning your knowledge and confidence and a fighter personality. What would you, in reflection, to recommend yourself in that time when you were first diagnosed, and how would you empower with yourself today and your knowledge?
Yes, absolutely. If I had to could tell myself some things, some encouragement or whatever, one thing I would tell myself to share with your loved ones and friends, just share with them, what you were going through. Share with them that you were diagnosed with lupus, and then when you experience the kidney failure, just begin to share, because what I found out was that now that I'm out of it, it was that there were people just waiting to help. And, that was the main thing I heard was, oh my God, I didn't know you were going through so much. So I would tell myself, share with your friends and your loved ones and open up, because that would have opened up more support. And just tell yourself to, because oftentimes I was fighting that mental piece of, oh my God, I'm going to die. I may not live here to watch my kids. I may not be here to see my kids grow up. And, it's hard to tell yourself not to fear. But I would have also, relaxed more in that area, or empowered myself even more, learn more. Even though I was learning some things there, I would have told myself, learn as much as you can, because the more knowledge you get, it definitely empowers you in more ways than one. So yeah, those are the two things, definitely.
Wonderful. So with the last kind of concluding our conversation today, I really appreciate that you found the time and made this conversation happen, because I think it's so important highlighting stories like yours and people who came from very difficult place,
Yes.
being crushed into those very hard conditions, and defining your way as becoming lupus and kidney advocates, becoming someone who empowers other patients and their families to step in and play an active role in kidney advocacy, organ donation. And I really want to make sure that our audience have a chance to reach out to you. And if some of them are kidney patients who right now on dialysis and they're looking to start their campaigns for kidney disease, I really would like you guys to encourage to reach out to Dorothea and ask her advice, because she's here for you and it's her mission. And she's so amazing. So I'm sure you're just going to have amazing time connecting with her. But besides this, that may change your life. Connecting with patients like Dorothea, who went through the experience, were able to go through organ transplant, and now be an advocate for those diseases. So never hesitate to learn more and also connect with amazing people in our community who have been successfully managing this condition and gain their life back. So Dorothea, just a last thing, would you like to share any other wishes, recommendations to our audience before we complete our conversation today?
Yes. First, I would say thank you so much, Natalia, for inviting me and on your podcast. Thank you so much that I could share my story. And to the listening audience, if you are experiencing if you lupus or kidney disease, I would I would love to talk with you. I would love to share with you anything that I may can help in your journey. I would love to. This is what I do, and my greatest desire is to give back and be that person that I wish I had, along the way when I was going through what I was going through. And so I'm just Facebook away or an email away. So again, thank you, Natalia.
Thank you so much. You have a lively weekend, and
You too.
I cannot wait to the following podcast and know more about your support group and all these great opportunities you provide for kidney patients.
Absolutely. Absolutely.